guys, here I am. I find myself with the famous Rich Kimball. Rich, good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. Good morning. I'm
Hey,
great.
first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to go ahead and do this. The more and more that I actually thought about it, I thought, this is crazy, man. I started thinking in my head of just how much history with regard to Volkswagens and events and everything else have just transpired, since you've been in it. And I'm just super excited to go ahead and share with other people, how it all began. So I would love to go ahead and start back on, how did your affinity for Volkswagens begin?
Well, the first Volkswagen I was exposed to and got to see and now own was my '57 convertible, and it was my uncle's best friend bought it for his wife when they got married, and he brought it over to show my uncle at my grandmother's house, and I was staying there. So I walked out with my uncle in the driveway and looked at that convertible on the day it was brand new.
Oh my gosh.
And then I just chased it for, you know, 30 years or 40. And I finally bought it off my uncle's best friend in like 94.
Oh my
So I've
gosh.
had it 30 years.
Wow.
But that was my first Volkswagen interest. The first Volkswagen I owned
Uh-huh.
was in high school.
Okay.
And my main interest in high school was surfing.
Okay.
And I had a friend whose family were original members of the San Onofre Surf Club.
Wow.
They
Okay.
also owned like a '62 Westfalia, which
Okay.
at this point was only a couple years old.
Uh-huh.
And we went to I went to Santa with them. In fact, for some reason, my mom let me go a couple weekends with my friend. My friend was 16. I was
Uh-huh.
only 15, so he could drive. So here's a 15, a 16-year-old driving to San Onofre, and
That's so cool.
could go down on a Friday and spend a night or two and come home on Sunday, right there on the
Wow.
beach.
Wow.
Um, and so that was sort of magical. So when it came time for me to get a car,
Uh-huh.
one of the coaches at Dustin High School had a summer camp for kids, and he had a '60 Mango gray beige combi that they used, and it said Los Amigos Day Camp on the doors,
Huh.
and had pictures of little kids' faces on the side.
Okay.
And there was a white kid, a brown kid, a black kid, and a yellow kid,
Uh-huh.
down the side of this bus.
Uh-huh.
And I bought it from him as a senior in high school.
Uh-huh.
My family had moved to Corona Del Mar,
Oh wow.
upping my surfing exposure.
Nice.
And so I bought this bus, and that was summer of 1966.
Wow.
And I drove within a couple of weeks, we were in Mexico surfing at Raul's, our favorite spot.
Uh-huh.
And I met this guy, Bill Schuster. There was a surf contest at San Miguel, and Bill Schuster was there with his bus, and I parked next to him, and we were talking. And he said, "Hey, you got to come join our club. You live in Corona Del Mar. The club's in Costa Mesa."
Oh wow.
And it was the Newport Beach Volkswagen Club.
No way.
And so in summer of 1966, I joined that, and Norm Batchelder was the president,
Uh-huh.
and he was only he I was 17, he was 16, and he was the president of the club, and so after that's where it started.
That is so cool. That is super cool. And so, I mean, as being part of this club, what did you guys do? Did you get togethers or did you go on road
Yeah,
trips?
most of the time we cruised on Fridays and Saturday nights, and Bob's Big Boy in Costa Mesa was a big hangout spot,
Uh-huh.
and then we'd all go down and we'd shoot the peninsula. We called it. We'd go down and drive all the way down Balboa Boulevard to the end and turn around and come back in a caravan of colored parking lights,
Wow, that's pretty
and
cool.
we had back then you could have a beach party at Bolsa Chica
Uh-huh.
and pull right out on the sand
Oh
off the high road.
wow. Really?
And so we would do that before, our cars was around a circle around a fire.
Uh-huh.
And we rented cabins at Big Bear in the winter.
That's awesome.
Went up there and rallies were, back then rallies were very popular. There was a rally like every other weekend, and every other time it started at the corner of Harbor and Orangethorpe. Regardless of who was putting it on, they all started there.
No kidding.
And so you go on car rallies,
Uh-huh.
and then in '68 the bug-in started.
So 68, the bug-in started. So that was and I'm assuming that you started going then from the get-go, huh? How did you get involved with the whole bug-in thing?
We Vic Wilson had opened up, not opened up, but Vic Wilson had an office in Costa Mesa, and it was in the back of our friend's shop, Jeff James Limited, and he sold accessories and stuff. We all bought stuff there, and it was rumored that he had an office, and so the club decided we want somebody to go to the office and talk to Vic and see what the club could do to be involved with the new event. And I got elected.
Wow.
So I went there and I met with Vic, and we immediately became buddies. And I started with the first event. All I really did at the very first bug-in was organize a crew to help park cars in the parking lot. And then after that first event, I got involved in handing out, driving around. I knew all the shops, everywhere to go. So I'd take a pile of flyers and drive around and put a stack on everybody's counter.
There you go, like you do today.
And then they had a program, a bug-in program, and the guy that sold all the ads was, I can't remember his name now, but he was the advertising director at Road and Track and Cycle World. And he really didn't have the time to mess with a stupid bug-in program, but he did a lot of. So I told Vic, I said, well, what do you pay for ads? It was, I don't know, 15% or something silly, but I said, well, I could sell some ads. He says, well, we got, so-and-so selling ads. I go, well, so the Bug-in 2 program, or I think it was Bug-in 2 or 3 program, I sold more ads than he did.
Oh my gosh.
And then I lined up more guys to help, and after about a year, I was just part of the crew working, and my job was to handle all the trophies and get them to the event, and then get them and organize them to hand out at the tower. And then I was organizing the car show because Al Martinez was a buddy, and I got him sponsor the car show. And
wow,
I remember those days into the car show. And then eventually, about mid-'70s, it just became my responsibility. And then in 1980, it became mostly mine.
Okay.
And so the last 4, 80, 81, 82, and 83, those were the big years. Those were, at the last 2 bug-ins, we had over 1,000 cars buy pit passes.
Wow.
Doesn't mean they all raced. Some were in the car show. Some of them just had to hang out. But we had over 10,000 spectators.
Dude, that's pretty good.
I think I could never get NHRA to officially say it, but we had the largest, and still have had the largest, one day, open up at 8 and close at 5, tech and race and eliminate all the cars in one day.
Wow.
They had their big meets. They have funny car meets with 12,000, 15,000, but they only have 12 cars.
Right.
And it takes them 2 days to do it.
Right. So let me ask you something. Now, the first bug-in, you said 1968, correct? Where was it held?
OCIR. It was brand new.
Okay, OCIR.
Actually, that was a big, because in 1967, 68, that's when Saddleback Park opened.
Okay.
And that's when OCIR opened. And we all went to OCIR. When they first opened OCIR, they had a little race course lined by the tires, and they would rent you Subaru 360s to go out there and race around. When it started, it was 2 cars at a time, but then we ruined that. So then it was just 1 car for elapsed time that you would drive around.
Hold on a second. What do you mean you ruined that?
Well, the club would show up, and everybody's banging into everybody and trying to, put them into the tires.
Nice.
So
that's funny.
We got in trouble. Our club got banned, I think, from the place. Same thing happened at the go-kart track in Costa Mesa.
Oh, yeah?
Well, everybody wanted to race.
Right. That's pretty funny. So the bug-in, I mean, that is pretty wild. And gosh, you mentioning El Martinez, I remember all those, what was it, inter shows?
Intershows,
Yeah,
yeah,
inter
that was
shows.
after the
Yeah,
when
I
the
remember
bug-in
that.
died.
Hmm.
Several sprung up.
And when did it die?
October of 1983.
Okay, all right. So that was the last
Well,
bug-in.
that was the last bug-in. The next week was the World Finals, and that was
Okay.
it. They're done.
So what was the number for the last bug-in?
31.
31. Okay. And then you kicked it off again. You brought it back to life when?
Well, I always held out for a quarter-mile drag strip.
Uh-huh.
They opened Irwindale in about 2001,
Mm-hmm.
and we started doing drag days there with Eighth Mile.
Okay.
But then in 2005, they
Uh-huh.
opened the drag strip, or they had the drag strip at California Speedway. So
Ah,
that's when we brought the bug-in back.
okay. Yeah, I remember that. And so that was 32, right?
Bug-in 32.
Yeah, Bug in 32. Okay. Yeah, I was there. Super, super cool. I mean, that's awesome. I love the story of how, just going down to San Onofre and so forth. And I guess that's a pretty good little segue into Big Wednesday. I mean, you've done a lot of events, but man, I love Big
Big Wednesday is
Wednesday.
definitely the most fun event.
It is. It is.
Um,
And what made
it's
you
sort
do
of
it
like
there?
Silverado, the camp out that Andy does now.
Yep.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
Big Wednesday, we all, my friends, a lot of my friends and I went to San Onofre a lot.
Uh-huh.
And on Wednesday afternoons, they had a group of old guys that would sit around and play ukuleles and guitars in a little circle.
That's cool.
And Bruce Myers was part of the group, played
Wow.
guitar. And this one guy, my hero, Bill Tapia,
Uh-huh.
I went to his 102nd birthday party at the Royal Hawaiian, and he played for us.
Wow.
So I like listening to that kind of music. So we would go surfing. Usually when we went surfing, it was 6 in the morning. We were
Okay.
pretty much dawn patrol guys.
Right.
But on Wednesdays we'd hang out and listen to the music, and we would just sit around and we go, why don't we should all bring our Volkswagens one day. A lot of us had Volkswagens,
Uh-huh.
but we might have had our surfboards in a Toyota truck or something.
Uh-huh.
So we started that in about, gosh, 98 or 7, I
Uh-huh.
don't know, back when. And we'd bring our Volkswagens down on Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
And first there was 6 or 8 cars, and it got up to 15 or 20 cars.
Wow.
And we officially made it an event, and we take over the area called Old Man's, where the little shack is.
Yep.
And we just get there at, a gate opened at 6 in the morning. We'd be there out in line we'd be out in line at 5 and 4, and then
gosh.
eventually, like now, they're out there at midnight the night before,
Yep.
or as soon as the local Gestapo leaves, or ends his shift, so he's not there to turn him away. And it got to the point where we had 200 cars.
Wow.
And
how many can you fit down there though?
Well, probably about, at that point, probably about 250 to 300 cars would fit
Okay.
down there. And then at a certain point, when the little ticket guy got to the number at the top,
Uh-huh.
then everybody went into a parking lot and
Ah.
formed a line.
Uh-huh.
And then it was one car out, one car in.
Okay.
And a lot of cars, because there's a lot of surfers that are there at 6 and they're out of
Yeah.
there at 8.
Right.
And then there's the lunch crowd that comes down to go get in a couple of waves at lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's the evening crowd that comes in, at 3:30 in the afternoon. So, or after work.
Uh-huh.
So it fluctuates.
Uh-huh.
But at some point, the state decided that I needed a permit.
No.
Like, I don't know, around mid-2000s. And I sort of ignored them for a couple times and went, permit for what? For all of us to decide to go to the beach today? What are you going to kick out Volkswagens? I got a couple of attorneys in the group that would love to hear that.
Right. Right.
But you asked.
Yeah. Look at this. This is your cat making its
Combi.
debut, and I love the fact that your cat's name is Combi.
Combi.
Hi, Combi. Hi. How are you?
Checking you guys out.
Yeah. Super cool.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
they wanted a permit, and
Uh-huh.
finally I got a permit.
Okay.
And I don't know, it was $250 an event, and I
Ah.
was already spending $500 an event on food. I'd just give $500 to Fred, and Fred would buy all the brats and hot dogs and whatever, and we would feed anybody that wanted to eat until we ran out of food.
That's
You know, we
awesome.
fed the lifeguards and
Uh-huh.
everybody, and then it went along for a while, and and we wanted to make a T-shirt.
Uh-huh.
Well, they wanted 18%, and then the state already wants 7.5%. Pretty soon it was like, sell a T-shirt for $15, you're losing $2 every time you sell one.
Wow.
But we made a shirt for a long time. We haven't made one for a couple of years now.
Right, right.
Um, and then the final clincher was about 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
They told me I had to get insurance,
Just keeps getting
and
better.
I checked into it, and it was like $800 for insurance
For a day?
for a day at the beach, where everybody's already paying 15. So I said, no, we're just paying $15 to drive our car in here. So I quit altogether. I didn't get a permit. I didn't do anything.
Uh-huh.
And that was COVID year, or the year before COVID. And
Okay.
then we didn't have one on COVID,
Mm.
although a bunch of people showed up and it was still open. The place was open. And so then we've still done it every year since. I'm waiting for the
Awesome.
hammer to drop. But
So, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned Silverado. We've talked about Drag Day, Bug In, obviously Big Wednesday. Thinking about all of the different events that you've always promoted and put on. Going back to when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't think I ever thought about it.
So it just
I
kind
mean,
of fell into
I
place?
there was a short time where I was going to be it depended on where I worked, for a while I was going to be a pharmacist, because I
Really?
worked at Burchard's Pharmacy in Corona del Mar, and we delivered. I was the delivery guy, and I drove a 64 Volkswagen panel bus.
No
That was
way.
my delivery vehicle.
Nice,
I drove
dude.
that thing all over. I know every house by the number and street in Corona del Mar.
Wow.
But then I got into the restaurant business. Um, One of
Huh.
the people in our neighborhood were the people that started the snack shops,
Okay.
um, um, and Rubens and Ruben E. Lee's and all
Oh,
those,
yeah,
that
yeah,
series,
yeah.
Far West Services.
Uh-huh.
So I got into the um, management program, um, and where you were a dishwasher for a month, and then you were a busboy for whatever. Then you got to be a cook, and then you were a lunch cook first. That was the easiest one. Then a breakfast cook was really the hardest one.
Oh,
That's where you're
really?
turning a lot of food over quickly
So you're a
and
short order cook?
short order.
Oh boy.
And I sort of liked that, and I was in the program to be a manager. But then I I was back at working at a drugstore, in East Bluff Pharmacy in
Oh,
Newport Beach,
wow. Yeah.
and my wife worked there before we were married.
Oh.
And I was going to Long Beach State as a photography major,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden we were getting married, and this was 69, 70. I didn't want to work at the same place as my wife. I go home to her, and my buddy Vic Wilson wanted more help at Saddleback Park. I'd been working at Saddleback Park part-time when they'd have a special event. We had a couple of hill climbs,
Huh.
um, and some major international motocross races
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I didn't work there full-time because I was going to school.
Mhm.
Finally, I just said, I quit school and went to work full-time at Saddleback Park.
Wow.
And I was just a grunt digging post holes and
Uh-huh.
cleaning trash. And then we had a rental department there. We rented out Yamaha 100s and Honda QA50s and Yamaha 60s, little ones.
Uh-huh.
And I worked in the rental department.
Uh-huh.
And then I just worked more and more. And in about mid-70s, Vic made me the general manager
No way.
of Saddleback Park.
Whoa.
So I was responsible for 1,000 acres of crazy people
Whoa.
every weekend.
1,000 acres of crazy people.
And
Love that.
and it was fun. I mean, everything about it. We had a small parts room I had to take care of. We had a ticket booth, and so we had ticket personnel on weekends,
Uh-huh.
and we had first aid patrols. Everybody had to get their first aid
Certifications.
certifications,
Ah.
and and then got into promoting events.
Very cool.
Built a BMX motocross course.
Wow, really? Okay.
And it was a lot of fun
Oh, that's so cool.
until the park sold.
When did it sell?
1980.
In 80,
And
really?
it sold to a guy that I really was buddies with up until he bought the place, and then not so much. He did not run the park the way Vic and I saw it.
Mm,
We were very safety conscious. We had lots of signs, and
hmm
we had patrols every weekend of older guys that could watch out for problems and
Uh-huh.
get people's bikes started when they broke down.
Huh.
And this guy was more interested in just take the money from the front gate, and
Oh.
didn't. So we still owned the Bug-In
Uh-huh.
and Baja Cross. Oh yeah, I did off-road races too.
What?
So we had Baja Cross was a short course series
Okay.
on tracks. We raced at Saddleback Park,
Uh-huh.
and we raced a couple races at Corona, and a couple races at Speedway 117, which was down in San Diego, right on the border.
Wow.
And they were just short course,
Uh-huh.
Baja Cross.
Okay.
Um,
Did you have a Baja?
oh, I had one of the first Bajas ever.
No way. Tell me about
Well,
that. What was it?
the
What
first
year?
Baja Bug, was made by Gary Emery,
Okay.
and it was all metal, made by Chick Iverson Volkswagen's body shop.
Huh.
And the first Baja Bug kit, I believe, first one ever, those were made by Drino Miller and Stan Havens, Miller Havens.
Huh.
Miller Havens had a business over on Baker or off Baker in Costa Mesa,
Yeah.
and this was during Newport Beach Volkswagen Club, so we would go over and I saw them making they made the first bug-eyed style
Oh,
one,
yeah.
and I got like one of the first 10 kits that they made.
Wow.
Bought a $75 oval window and got out my saber saw.
Wait. Hang
Made
on.
it all
Back
by
up.
myself at home.
You bought a $75 oval window.
$75. Oh yeah, that was a cheap one. 100. Most of them were $100.
Oh my gosh.
But a $75 oval window running,
Okay.
and I bought one of the kits,
Uh-huh.
and I saber sawed off the car myself, and put the kit on, and bought some wide tires with some Gates Commando, wide rims with Gates Commando tires.
Okay.
You bought the wheels from Big Wheel in Garden Grove.
Oh my gosh.
They made the wide wheel, and then like an exhaust system from Mesa Muffler. That's where Newport Beach went for all their muffler things.
Wow. Wow.
And that was it. It was a Baja Bug. Oh, and I painted it Rust-Oleum primer.
You rattle
Rust-Oleum
Oh my
camouflage.
Oh, that's
Different
awesome.
colors.
That is awesome.
Bolted the spare tire to the roof, and that was it. And it was a lot of fun. We drove that thing to Mexico, to Big Bear, to all over the place.
Now, was it 36 horse or what was
Yeah.
in it? Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is so cool. Now, when you talk about ovals, I got to ask, because I still have my hat, but I think one of the first times that I'd met you, one of my first, well, my only Baja that I ever actually the first one, I had a 56 Baja that I bought somewhere down in Oceanside. And, this is back in the 90s. I think I paid $500 for it, but I needed some parts. And somebody said, oh, you need to talk to Rich Kimball. He's got the ovals only business. How did that come about, your ovals only business?
It came about because I liked oval windows.
Uh-huh.
Had a couple of them.
Uh-huh.
Always got 2 of them now.
Uh-huh.
I sold BFY
Bugs for you.
in 1990
Mm-hmm.
to Phil Lucas from Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
And when I did that, I still, I went to, I always was going to Pomona,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a big collection of parts at home for just oval windows. I just collected oval window stuff. And then I knew everything. I bought all the oval window parts that were currently being made from most of them from Wolfsburg West.
Uh-huh.
And so I just had a booth and then I made that little handbook, which
Uh-huh.
was basically,
I remember that.
It was just some reprints of stories
Uh-huh.
from each year on a car that was in HotVWs.
Ah.
And then a chapter, like 3 pages,
Uh-huh.
on each year, just
Okay.
going over the differences
Uh-huh.
of when they changed and all the changes from 53 to 54, and 4 and 5 had some weird stuff, and then they changed in 55, and 56 and 7s had all kinds of different.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they look the same parked at the street on the
Yeah.
street, but there are lots of little. And then I put a catalog quote section, which was basically just a parts book, so that
Uh-huh.
you could actually see the part what it was.
That's cool.
And then I put I put in color charts,
Oh,
so that
awesome.
if you knew the color of your car, you knew what color the wheels were supposed to be or the interiors that came with it. Da, 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 da. And then I just did that out of the garage here.
That's cool. And you mentioned Hot VWs. I want to say you actually, I think you interviewed me for a story. Didn't you write the Collector's
Yeah,
Corner column in
I
Hot
started
VWs?
the collector's corner
Yeah,
in
Collector's Corner.
1979. Um, my wife and I, we went down to Mexico for the Baja 1000,
Uh-huh.
and we had a brand new 79 camper just like this one, same
No way.
color, everything.
Whoa.
And we drove down there, and we were at the Bahia Hotel in
Uh-huh.
the bar with Lane Evans,
Yeah.
the editor. Was he the editor yet? I think he was the editor then. And we were just talking about Volkswagens and stuff. And he says, "Why don't you do a column or a story,
Uh-huh.
help us with some old ones
Uh-huh.
and the vintage cars?" I
Yeah.
go, "Yeah." And we were talking about the treasure of Tijuana,
Yeah.
how we found this old dealership down there. And he goes, "Well, that's what you should do, is to do the article. Start off with the treasure of Tijuana." Well, technically we'd already found it
Yeah.
mid 70s, but I taught so that we wrote it in I wrote it in 3 parts, and that the first part was hearing about this place and going down to Tijuana to look for it.
Uh-huh.
And then the second one was finding it, we went to a tire recap guy,
Oh, okay.
and he walks outside and he points over to see those 2 posts over there. Well, they used to have a Volkswagen logo on top of them.
Oh, no way.
So then we went over there and we found the building, and it was really a cool dealership. It had some storefronts and then an entrance that went back into a patio area with sales, with glass windows here, and then over you could see where the repair lifts were. Only now there
Wow.
was just storage and people living in some of the areas.
Uh-huh.
And so we found the owner,
Uh-huh.
and the owner came down, and he was a doctor, and he showed up, in the summer. He shows up in a 3-piece suit,
Uh-huh.
wool suit, like, and we said, "Well, are there any parts left,
Uh-huh.
here?" He says, "Oh yes, I have this little office, the old office building here." So he opens up this place, and here's this storage room, and it's stacked
Wow.
with cool stuff.
Wow.
I mean, my favorite things were, like, there was a bunch of the original flags that flew in the dealerships that were
Oh,
white
yeah.
on bars with gold ends, and they hung down, and they had a big VW logo on
Yeah.
them. And original VW tools in the wood boxes.
Ah, that's awesome.
A whole box of hardtail lights and boxes of semaphores, and all this stuff. So we the first time we found it, we bought a few things. Now this time I'm talking about it 4 or 5 years later, and we're down there and we find it, and there's still Dr. Bustamante. But as we're writing the story, the first story is we're going to Mexico to look for it, and the second story is we think we know where it is, and then the third
Teasing
story
it.
was we found it. Well,
Uh-huh.
in between the first and second story, I get a phone call from this guy, and it's this old German guy that lives down in Tijuana. He goes, "I'm the guy you're looking for." I go, "Oh, really?" So I played dumb. And who are you? And I says, "Well," he says, "Why? I was the parts manager and service manager
Oh my gosh.
at the dealership you're looking for." And I'm going, "Well, I don't think so, because I've talked to the owner a lot about the history of the other place."
Uh-huh.
Well, it ends up that the second dealership that opened up in Tijuana opened up in 1960, I think. And it was there until 1972, when Volkswagen started Puebla,
Uh-huh.
the factory,
Yeah.
and the Volkswagen government goes, "Okay, everybody buys from us now.
Ah.
And this family was an original um, Mexican family from Tijuana.
Okay.
They owned the Sparklets water thing. They owned the Mercedes dealership. They owned the Purina distributorship.
What? Oh my gosh.
And then they owned the books. So they just said, screw you guys.
Yeah.
They closed their dealership down
Uh-huh.
and moved all the stuff into this Purina warehouse.
Wow.
And this guy was the German parts and service manager.
Unbelievable.
And so we said, okay, well, we'll come down and see you.
Wow.
So we drove down there. I drove down there with my buddy Scott Hendrickson that had that worked at BFY. And we went down there and we looked at the parts. Or no, I was with Dave. That's right. The first couple trips I was with Dave Craig that was ended up being my partner when we started BFY.
Wow.
And we went down there and that made the first find look like nothing.
Wow.
It was so many parts and so many. I mean, all the parts bins all the parts racks from the dealership were all just stacked in here.
Unbelievable.
The most impressive thing when we first rolled up the door and we walked in there was this big round wood table, probably 12 feet in diameter, and it's stacked with little boxes about this big, square boxes. Volkswagen parts boxes.
Oh wow!
All on this into a big pyramid.
Okay.
They were all door handles, NOS door handles,
gosh.
from every kind of car you can think of. They were like Type 3 Ghia door handles, and they never even sold the Type 3 Ghia, I don't think, in Tijuana, but all door handles, and all of them pre-1972.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine?
So we mined that place for a long time, and we'd go down there. At that point in time, this was 1980. I had a little shop or an office shop thing over in Tustin that I ran Periscope Enterprises out of.
Okay.
So we just started filling up the back warehouse into this thing with parts. And we'd go down there and we'd take I had this Chevy van that was a Periscope van, and we'd go down there and we'd buy a van full. And you'd sit around in a circle with a beer and some tacos, and the owner would come and sit down with you, and you'd sit in this little circle, and we just pile things in the middle and go, how much this one? Okay. And Scott would keep track, and we'd wait till we'd spent what we had. And we'd pick up all that stuff and take it back.
Dude,
and
that's crazy.
We got caught a couple times in coming across the border, but we would argue. The one time they pulled us in, and they were gonna make us turn around and go back. And by this time, it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
I go, hey, I know that I'm an American citizen sitting in America.
Yeah.
There's no freaking way that you can make me go back across the border.
Wow.
So you better figure out what's going on here, because if you look, this is all stuff where there's only, 5 or 10 things of one.
Yeah.
And between Dave and I, we probably had 10 Volkswagens registered Volkswagens.
Wow.
And so just call DMV and ask them, and the guy came back and said, you owe us $18 in taxes.
You're kidding me. Dude, that's
and we just
crazy.
Looked at him like, you kept us here this long so you can have $18.
Unbelievable.
So anyway, that was, after that, we made sure, like, when we were bringing doors, we'd only bring like 2 or 3 doors.
Wow.
We wouldn't bring 20.
Wow.
Because, and that is why BFY started, is we got so many parts and stuff, and my warehouse was full of stuff. And so Dave and I and Jeff Walters and Ted Allen, I think it was Ted Allen, started BFY.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
But 2 of them only lasted a month.
So, in a quick question, since you're saying BFY, obviously people that are watching right now, I know that it was Bugs for You.
Bugs for You. We
right?
still call it Bugs for You.
Yeah, totally. But when and how did Volkswagen come to you guys and say, hey, you guys can't do that?
Well, Volkswagen got sort of serious there, and let me see, we opened in '83, like about 85 or 6, and they came after us and sent the letter and said, you guys. So I'm thinking, well, wait, I knew Mr. Bug real well, and they were still Mr. Bug.
Uh,
And so I went and I talked to them, and they said, well, you can talk to our attorney, but you'll see we're going to have to eventually change our name. And so I talked
mm,
to their attorney, and I had a couple meetings with him. He goes, Rich, you don't have the money to spend to fight them and lose.
wow.
He was a cool guy, a very
Yeah,
cool
yeah.
guy. He says, what you should do maybe is figure out a way, and that's where we came up with BFY.
Mm,
And I said, I'm just going to call it BFY,
yeah.
obsolete parts.
There you go.
And he goes, yeah, they won't like that.
Huh.
But, because they said, well, that just means BFY, and everybody knows that's bugs for you. And I go, well, how do only the people that knew bugs for you, and they're always going to know bugs
Yeah.
for you.
Right.
And I said, besides, it stands for big frickin' yo-yos.
Nice.
That's
Nice.
what I think of you guys. And it went along for a while, and then like when I sold it,
Uh-huh.
and I started ovals only,
Uh-huh.
and I had a little book with a Volkswagen on the cover,
Yeah.
and so they came back at me again,
Hmm.
but by this time I had friends, and so I called into their PR department, friends and stuff, and I don't know who, whatever, but finally I called it my reverse Dear John letter.
Ah.
It just basically, without coming out and saying you have ultimate permission to do whatever you want, they just basically said they weren't going to bother me anymore. And
Good
they never
enough.
have. Because the whole time along, we had Bug In.
Yeah.
And I kept waiting for them, come after Bug In. Because when we started Bug In, you guys were a sponsor.
Wow.
So how are you going to come back and say, you helped us start it,
Right.
and now we can't have it?
Yeah.
But they never came after Bug In, the name Bug In.
That's good. That is good. What an incredible history, man. I mean, just amazing. And I love the fact that it all just kind of stemmed from you falling in love with that with the first car that you
But
saw.
everything was just sort of even like at the magazine.
Uh-huh.
I started writing my column, and
Uh-huh.
I wrote some car features on cars, if RK and Dean would let me, and and covered events like Kelly Park and
Uh-huh.
ones that I knew, and I ended up had a column every month for like 32 years.
Dude.
My English
32
teacher's
years.
flipping over in her grave,
Oh yeah? Why?
thinking that I would be internationally published. Are you kidding? I was her worst student in English.
Oh my gosh. There you go. There you go. That's a good way to go ahead and show her, hey, check it out. Now wait a minute. Did she ever see any of your work? Do you
No,
know?
no.
Oh, okay. Because that would have been pretty interesting to go and say, hey, check this out.
When I moved to Corona Del Mar in my senior year,
Uh-huh.
I never came back to Tustin for much until we moved back here to buy a house in
Okay.
the 70s.
So you grew up in Tustin? Where were you born?
I grew up on the same street we're on right now.
No way.
All the way from the 3rd grade to senior in high school, I lived on Lucero Way, one
Wow.
block over.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. Seriously, Rich. I think it is super cool. You know, it's interesting, you know, now how much time has gone by. I'm so happy that I've known you for so many years. And you know, you just mentioned Kelly Park, which will be next weekend. And I
Yeah.
haven't been in a long time. The last time that I went was with Fred, with Tim, and with Dave. And I thought it's just incredible, man. We've lost 3 good guys. And but I remember also how many times you were so kind enough to go ahead and open up your house and have some of those awesome get-togethers over here in the cul-de-sac.
Oh
And
yeah, we
you
filled
know,
this place up with Volkswagens.
which is awesome. You know, no, congratulations, man. You know, I think it is so cool when, you know, I mean, you talk about pursuing your passion. I think you definitely did, which is great. And I think the really cool part too, and eventually I'm going to talk to him as well, but I think it's really neat that Andy has gone ahead and taken the torch. And
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, things keep going, and I love the fact that, you know, everything that you've done for the hobby, and you know, and for a lot of us and a lot of people that were into ovals and just into Volkswagens and everything else. I mean, if it wasn't for pioneers like you, we wouldn't have these events. And I think it's really neat to look forward to these events. It's fun, man, and it brings families together. I mean, dude, it's wholesome fun. So thank you,
Yeah, my whole
sincerely.
family is always at the events, even now. That's the granddaughters. Um, Andy, his brother worked, because his brother lives down here now, so he's always at the events. And of course, his sister has always ran the T-shirts, souvenirs, and now the granddaughters work in the booth. And
Isn't that amazing? 3 generations,
poor
man.
Bobby has to work the front gate. That's good because she hires, Disney people.
Yep, exactly.
So
I
we have
know.
a friendly gate. I've always heard stories about so and so's events. The line takes forever, and the people are mean, and but not at the classic or the bug-in.
Right.
When we had it,
It's funny, but I'm sure Bobby probably told you, but I remember years ago when I was working at Disneyland, and I'm still working there, but I mean, years ago, I was walking backstage and I was wearing your Ovals Only hat. And I walked by and I hadn't met Bobby yet. And this is how we met. She looked at my hat and she said, "Hey, nice hat." And I go, "Thank you." And she said, "Yeah, that's my husband's company." And I said, "You're kidding me." And, then we became lifelong friends, which is really cool. And she's an angel. So, no, super cool. But I do have a request, if you don't mind. This first car that you, that inspired it all, can I go take a look at it with you?
Sure.
All right, man. Let's
It's
go
at
check
Andy's
it out.
house.
All right, let's go. Let's
All
check it
right.
out. Rich, thanks again, man.
You bet.
Appreciate it. All right, Rich, show me. And tell me again, this is a car that you saw your uncle's?
I saw this car the day it was new.
Wow.
My uncle's best friend bought it for his wife and brought it over to my uncle's house
Oh my gosh.
in Pasadena, and to show him, and I was there. I was like 8.
8
And,
years old, you saw this car.
I think
Look at this thing. I mean, it's still all original.
well, yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay,
Lenny
fooled
did
me.
the seats a few years ago
Okay.
because they were just beyond whatever. And
Wow, look at this.
it got a new carpet kit. Unfortunately, it's not original carpeting, but it was Lauren Pearson wanted to use it for the pattern for the old pieces, and he made me this carpet kit, so I put it in there. But
Okay.
the paint on the dash and everything's original.
Wow, look at this.
And it was repainted once on the outside.
Once, okay. And what's this color called?
Shetland gray.
Shetland gray. Very cool. Unbelievable. Very cool. Well, thank you, man. I had to take a peek at it and check it out. So
It's a fun car.
yeah, I bet. I
We,
bet. Very cool.
I've driven it all over, and
How cool. This is where it all started. 8 years old. Very cool.
my first Volkswagen love was this car.
How could it not be? Well, that's awesome. Very, very cool. Thank you, Rich, for showing it to me.
You bet.